This game had a bit of everything. The rain was falling. Predictably, the Old Trafford roof was leaking. Garnacho was pouting, but just in a different team's colours at Old Trafford this time around. There was red cards. Maresca showing exactly what not to do as a coach when you get a red card. And we found out that only a red card can stop Amorim from playing a 3-4-2-1. So yes, it wasn't the Pope. It was actually Casemiro that forced him into a change. I'm going to look at some interesting points from the game, starting with a good, finishing with a bad. As always, guys, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here, and let's get into it.
Okay, let's go.
So starting off, I'm going to talk about how good United were and how aggressive they were in the opening phase of that game, really forcing Chelsea into the mistakes that eventually led to the red card. We've had good, promising starts to pretty much every Premier League game so far, though. United have come out of the blocks really quickly. And I was saying to myself in this Chelsea game, it's going to be interesting to see how United do now later on in the game. Are we going to fade away like we did in previous ones? But obviously, with that red card, it did heavily change the game. So we're going to have to see now in future games whether United can keep that aggression going. But this was what I'm sort of talking about. Straight away, opening 20 seconds of the game, United getting players in the box. We haven't seen that so far in the Premier League. So that was very good to see. And in the press, United very, very aggressive again. And Buemo forcing the goalkeeper to kick it long. Very aggressive positioning of United's wing-backs. So this time around, Dogu wins that ball back. And you can see here how aggressive United are at trying to win that ball. But when it does eventually come out then, Chelsea do eventually manage to escape. You can see the aggressive positioning again of those wide centre-backs. Something that Amorim talked about after that Man City game. If you're going to play this system, your wide centre-backs have to be aggressive. De Ligt did very, very well in this game in that regard. This time around, forcing Cole Palmer to not have that time and space on the ball. Again, another instance here of United simply just getting players into the box, allowing Dogu to cross that ball in. Similar instance up against Arsenal, similar position for Dogu, but he's got no one to cross the ball into. So United having players in there is a good sign. As that ball gets recycled, there's even more United players arriving into that box as well. Very, very aggressive from United, so that was very, very promising. And in that press again, Seshko making that bending run, making sure Sanchez is forced to kick it long. United get that ball back, and this is where the chaos erupts in Chelsea, getting that red card. Bayindir kicks that ball long. Seshko does a very, very good job of flicking that ball on. Caicedo, I think it is, on his toes as Mbeumo runs past him. Sanchez comes out, makes an absolute disaster of it. Chelsea deservedly have a guy sent off. You can talk about the two players making the defensive runs as much as you want, but you can see from this position here, if Sanchez doesn't make that tackle and Mbeumo is clean through on goal, it has to be a red card. And now United should have wrapped the game up before half-time. We got the 2 goals, had chances to make it even more, but that doesn't mean that I don't still have stuff to mourn about from that game. Like in instances where our centre-backs are in sort of these positions. You can see multiple times throughout the game, De Ligt in these positions where you would sort of want a more attacking player in order to cross that ball in. But instead, De Ligt is in there. We've seen this in previous games. When we're chasing the game, I think it was up against Grimsby, up against Arsenal, you're seeing centre-backs like De Ligt in these sort of positions. United, in this instance, they would have man up against Chelsea. Do you really need 3 centre-backs? Do you really need De Ligt being the guy picking the ball up in these instances? It's a very small thing, but it's something that, attacking-wise, I just don't really like. And you can see from this instance, a prime example, De Ligt has multiple options in order to play that ball to, but it ends up being a failed cross. You'd expect a better attacking player to make more out of that instance. But then there's also bigger things I'd like to talk about as well. In the second half, it all started with Amorim making this change. Before the halftime whistle, United was sort of in a 5-1-3 formation, and I thought it was understandable after the Casemiro red card. You get to halftime and then you sort things out then. But no, the Ugarte sub meant that we were sticking to this plan, and it just shows to me that Amorim is allergic to having a midfield. And simply put, at 10 versus 10, I didn't like what I saw. We conceded possession, and while Chelsea didn't cause much of a threat, I do wonder what Chelsea would have done with the likes of Palmer on the pitch, as United seemed wide open in between the lines, much like they've been when there's been 11v11 in previous games. I could be being too pessimistic here, I understand that. But I think it's just I'm scarred from what I've seen in previous games under Amorim now, both last season and in this season. And this is what I'm talking about. Players having this sort of space in between United's lines. This was before half-time, so you'd expect Amorim to make some changes to stop this sort of thing happening. But it didn't really happen. In the second half again, United were aggressive with those wide centre-backs. De Ligt, a prime example. Very, very different to what Euro was doing up against Man City. So this is the sort of issues that Amorim was talking about with the aggression. And yes, your wide centre-backs do need to be aggressive. But this is what I think of when United have those aggressive wide centre-backs. What if Chelsea were able to hold that ball up and Maguire doesn't make this foul on João Pedro? Look at where De Ligt's positioning is. You can see why Euro in previous games, they're reluctant to push right up into the opposition half. It's not a natural position for a centre-back. And then if the opposition team is able to get that ball forward, you're left scrambling then, trying to regain your position. So you can see why Euro in previous games has been a little bit reluctant to push forward. This is the instances where I just start to get a little bit worried. It wasn't just De Ligt, it was also Luke Shaw having the aggressive positioning on their marker. Something, again, you have to do. But again, this instance here, the ball could go into this Chelsea player here. It doesn't. Luke Shaw eventually comes in there to mark him, but the space was there for Chelsea to play into. They just didn't really make the most of it. And then there's also troubles for United when the ball gets knocked down in this situation and your midfield isn't set. You can see Ugarte, Maguire not quite in the right position. Chelsea able to progress that ball through the lines. João Pedro knocking it on to Enzo Fernandez. And then all of a sudden then, Reece James is through. United able to clear it this time around, but a very, very dangerous cross into United's 6-yard box. These are the instances where I just think it's far too easy to play through this United team. And I don't think Chelsea made the most of this sort of space at all in that second half. But it wasn't until João Pedro dropped a little bit deeper, that was when I started to get a little bit more worried. Having a very clever attacking player in there, I was surprised Chelsea didn't make that sub earlier on. But João Pedro, you can see the amount of space that he's got in between the lines. United centre-backs not quite sure who's meant to mark him. Again, you got Enzo Fernandez dropping a little bit deeper. Luke Shaw wants to go in there and press, but isn't quite sure. João Pedro in the middle of the pitch. Who's marking him? United's midfield, when Ugarte is pushed up on Caicedo, United's midfield just isn't really there. Again, you can see the space here that Chelsea's midfielders have. Eventually, Euro is trying to push up on João Pedro, but you can see, similar to that Man City game, the spaces between the centre-backs and their marker is very, very big. Obviously, United are more likely to retreat in this game as they're 2 goals up and there's only 10 minutes left. But you can see the confusion United centre-backs have in order of who's picking who up. When United go, obviously, and surrender that sort of territory in midfield and they don't have the numbers in there to compete with the opposition. And this is the last instance I'm going to talk about. João Pedro again having that space. This is where Chelsea only needed 1 goal to get back into it. Luke Shaw again doesn't know whether to press up or not as the other centre-backs have been pinned. João Pedro has that space to turn and run on United's back 5. This is the last 10 minutes where Chelsea only needed the 1 goal to get back into it. It's these sort of instances where I do get worried because it highlights the constant issues that we've had with that gap between the midfield and the defence so far in the Premier League season. It was a weird game. Like Chelsea, with Maresca making all those changes, they lost most of their attacking threat, and even in the second half, they didn't seem keen on getting back into the game. But the way United lost all resemblance of control as soon as the numbers were evened up, the way that the midfield and defence started opening up like in previous games, Amorim seems to love keeping those wide areas for the wide centre-backs to mark. And if they don't time their jumps perfectly, well, we've seen in recent weeks the trouble that it can cause. Despite Amorim trying to put these issues down to the players' attitudes, I'm simply not buying that. Putting Ugarte on over Mino in this game signalled to everyone how negative United were going to be. We don't seem to like having technical ball players in the midfield, and seeing Barcelona in midweek just shows how technical midfielders can help you in the midfield. I might be far too pessimistic, I understand that, but I do still have concerns about how Amorim sets this United team up and the space that we allow the opposition as soon as we start retreating into that mid-block. When we press aggressively, that's great. That mid-block, that's where I start to get a little bit more pessimistic again. But United are going to get a lot tougher tests now in the coming weeks. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how we do in those games. Let me know down in the comments down below, guys, what you thought about United's performance up against Chelsea. Are you the same as me? Do you in the pessimistic side of things? Or are you a lot more pro Amorim? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. As always, guys, drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll catch you in the next one.